Let's be real. In the world of data privacy, words matter. A lot. Using the right term isn't just some tiny detail. It's everything. Because if you get it wrong, you could be looking at massive fines and maybe worse, completely broken trust. So today, we're going to break down 5 of the most critical privacy terms that even the experts mess up and why it's so important for you to know the difference.
I love this quote because it just hits the nail on the head. We all think we know what these terms mean, right? But the gap between what we assume they mean and what they actually mean legally, well, that's where all the danger is.
And look, we are not talking about a little slap on the wrist here. Under huge laws like Europe's GDPR or California's CCPA, getting these terms wrong can cost a company millions. And beyond the money, it can totally destroy the trust you have with your users. And get this, even lawyers trip up on this stuff sometimes.
So, we're going to tackle 5 of the most commonly confused terms. We've grouped them into 3 big ideas: the myth of anonymity, the total confusion around consent, and the less is more rule of collecting data. All right, let's dive right into the first one.
First up, what I like to call the anonymity myth. A lot of people think anonymizing data is this easy, straightforward fix. Just flip a switch and all the privacy risk magically disappears. But, as you're about to see, it is so much more complicated than that.
So just take a second and ask yourself, what does anonymized actually mean to you? If you take a spreadsheet and just delete the column with everyone's name, is that data now anonymous? Well, the law has a very strict, and for a lot of people, a pretty surprising answer to that question.
This right here is the biggest, most dangerous oversimplification of them all. For data to be truly anonymized, it has to be irreversible. You can never, ever be able to trace it back. Remember that famous Netflix prize dataset? Netflix stripped out all the names, thought they were good to go. But researchers were still able to figure out who people were just by cross-referencing their movie ratings with public profiles on IMDb. So that data they called anonymous? Yeah, not so much.
Okay, this table lays it all out perfectly. On the left, you've got anonymization. Think of this as the point of no return. It is irreversible. Once the data is anonymized, it's not even legally considered personal data anymore. Think of big, broad statistics, like 70% of our users are from North America. You can't ever figure out who those specific people are. Now, on the right, you have pseudonymization. This is completely different because it's reversible. It's like replacing a name with a secret code, like patient 12345. You still have a secret key somewhere that can link that code back to the actual person. And this is the critical takeaway here. Because you can reverse it, pseudonymized data is still personal data under the law. It's a fantastic security measure for sure, but it is not an exemption from the rules.
All right, let's shift gears and move to our next pair of mixed-up terms. This is all about permission. The way companies ask for your data is super regulated, and the legal difference between opting out and giving consent is just huge.
They sound kind of similar, don't they? Like 2 sides of the same coin. But in the eyes of the law, they are fundamentally different things. So, do you know the difference? Which one is about you having to say no to stop something from happening, and which one is about you having to say yes to let it start?
And this just spells it out perfectly. An opt-out, which you see a lot under laws like the CCPA in California, is your right to raise your hand and say, hey, stop doing that. Think of the Do Not Sell My Data button. You have to take an action to say no. Consent, on the other hand, is the gold standard under GDPR, and it flips the whole script. It requires an active, upfront yes from you before they can collect anything. Simply being quiet or continuing to use a site, that doesn't count. You have to take an action to start the whole process.
In fact, for consent to even be considered legally valid under GDPR, it has to check all 4 of these boxes. It's got to be freely given, no tricking you into it. It has to be specific and informed so you know exactly what you're agreeing to. You have to take a clear, unambiguous action, like physically ticking a box that wasn't already ticked for you. And finally, it has to be just as easy to take back your consent as it was to give it in the first place. Yeah, it's a very, very high bar.
We've all seen this a million times, right?
You land on a new website, and that little banner pops up at the bottom, basically saying, hey, if you stick around, you agree to everything we do.
Well, let me be crystal clear. Based on the strict rules we just went over, that is completely 100% invalid. It's not a free choice, it's not specific, and it doesn't involve any clear action from you. It's the perfect example of a really common practice that just flat out fails to meet the legal standard.
And that brings us to our final core concept, data minimization. Now, a lot of people hear this and think it's just about having a policy for deleting old data every few years, but its real meaning is way more proactive, and honestly, a lot more powerful.
So what is it really? Is it about cleaning up your databases after the fact? Or is it something that should be happening much, much earlier in the whole process?
And here it is, the actual definition right from the GDPR. Data minimization is not about deleting data later on. It's about not collecting it in the first place if you don't absolutely need it for the specific reason you're asking. It's a less is more rule that starts at the very beginning, at the moment of collection.
Let's make this super concrete. Think about a job application form. Does a company really need to know a candidate's marital status to figure out if they're a good fit for a programming job? Almost certainly not. That's data minimization in action. If you can't clearly justify exactly why you need a piece of information for a specific task, well, you shouldn't be asking for it, period.
At the end of the day, getting these terms right, anonymization, consent, data minimization, it isn't just about being a stickler for words. It's absolutely fundamental. It's how you build trust with people and how you actually comply with the law. When you confuse these terms, you risk making promises you can't legally keep.
So the next time a company asks you for your data, I hope you'll see things a little differently. You'll know what to look for, and you'll understand what they're really promising, and maybe what they're not. So take a closer look at that cookie banner. Question that weird field on the sign-up form, because now you know the difference.